He is in a basement, alone, building robots that will lose. He has just called himself Evil Boy Genius out loud to nobody. His safe code is 123. This is the villain you remember, not the immortal dragon who traded his soul for a bowl of soup, not the 1,000-year-old demon who fit in the palm of your hand, the kid whose own robots would rather play Tea Party than fight. This is every villain Shaolin Showdown ever made, the terrifying, the ancient, the genuinely pathetic, and why the one who never won a single thing is the only one you never forgot. He opened the box. That is the single most important thing anyone does in this entire series, and a 15-year-old did it by accident, looking for spare robot parts. The box was a Heylin prison. Inside was Wuya, a 1,500-year-old witch, and the kid who let her out was Jack Spicer, self-proclaimed evil boy genius, heir to a fortune, and the proud owner of a basement lab, a robot army, and a helicopter backpack his grandmother gave him when he turned evil. Here is what Jack actually is. He is a genuinely gifted inventor. He built flying jackbots, a working Shen Gong Wu detector, and a robot duplicate of himself that mostly worked. And he is a coward who screams like he's being murdered whenever anything goes wrong, which is constantly. His signature weapon is the monkey staff, which turns him into a monkey. His safe passcode is 123, which the villainous Katnape once opened on her first guess while insulting him. And his big evil laugh is something he practices out loud to an empty room, because there is never anyone around to hear it. That last part is the whole character if you look. Everything that makes Jack a joke is the same thing that makes him a person. He doesn't actually want to conquer anything. When a truth spell forces him to explain himself, the reason he wants to rule the world is that he feels small and worthless. He wants to be somebody. The evil is just the loudest way he could think of to get noticed. And the tell is this. Whenever his chi got magically split in two, the good half of Jack didn't become a hero with a mission. He became a hyper hug-happy kid who just wanted to help and be liked. There was never a monster under there. There was a kid nobody was watching, which did not stop him from running the entire plot. Jack freed Wuya in episode 1. Jack, later, accidentally freed the most dangerous villain in the show. Season after season, the thing that set the story moving was this boy losing a Wu, losing a fight, losing control of something he unleashed. He has the worst win record of anyone here and the biggest body of consequences. He is in the title of this video for a reason. There was just one person Jack wanted approval from more than his mother, and that person called him a pitiful worm. Grandmaster Dashi, the ancient good guy, had scattered mystical objects called Shen Gong Wu across the planet, each one a different power, a sword that summons wind, gloves that let you teleport, a staff that turns you into a monkey. When two enemies grab the same Wu at the same time, it glows, and the world stops for a Shaolin Showdown, a one-on-one duel in a reality that bends to whatever game the challenger names. I challenge you to a Shaolin Showdown. Both fighters wager a Wu. Let's go, Shaolin Showdown. The ground rises, physics quits, and the winner takes all three. If you were a kid in 2004, you shouted Gong Yi Tanpai at least once. That was the go. Jack was there for all of it. Every hunt, every duel, every glowing rock, Jack showed up, called for his jackbots to attack, and lost. And he kept coming back, because losing never taught him the one lesson it should have, which is that nobody was on his side. Look at how the other villains treated him. Katnape called him a robo-freak. Wuya, his own partner, told him, "I'm not your mommy. Now pick up your toys, Jackie." Chase Young, the villain he worshipped, wouldn't remember he existed. Jack's response to a world that kept rejecting him was to build his friends out of scrap metal, an army of robots programmed to obey because obedience was the closest thing to loyalty he could reliably get. And even they let him down. His robots got caught on separate occasions playing Tea Party and picking flowers instead of fighting. He did land exactly one real victory worth naming. In The New Order, Jack trapped Chase Young in a magic sphere and stole his army of jungle cats. For one glorious stretch, the loser ran the board. He got it by betraying the one person he admired most, which, in this show, is practically a family tradition. Because the villain Jack looked up to had done something far worse to get where he was. Wuya was, at full power, the strongest being this show ever put on screen. She opens the entire series as the villain in the very first Xiaolin Showdown 1,500 years ago against Grandmaster Dashi himself. She lost. Dashi sealed her into that wooden puzzle box, and there she stayed, a disembodied spirit, until Jack pried it open by accident. That is the tragedy of Wuya, and it repeats. She is the most powerful villain here, and she spends almost the whole series depending on someone weaker to carry her. As a ghost, she can't touch anything. She can only sense Shen Gong Wu and nag Jack toward them, an ancient witch reduced to backseat driving a teenager. Her full powers are terrifying when she finally gets them. Heylin magic, waves of darkness, an army of rock golems pulled up out of the ground. The problem is holding on to them. She got her body back exactly once the honest way, and it took a hero falling to do it. Raimundo, passed over and resentful, betrayed the monks and stole a single Shen Gong Wu for her. The serpent's tail. That one object was all Wuya needed to go solid and conquer the world overnight. It didn't last. When Raimundo came back to his friends, she went back in the box. And the second time she returned, she got a crueler deal. A new villain restored her to a human body, then deliberately withheld her real power because at full strength she would have been stronger than him, and he could not allow that. So the strongest being in the series spent her final stretch as a mortal woman in someone else's palace, making threats she couldn't back up, her golems out of reach. Even a small child saw through her. Jack's little cousin once looked the ghost witch dead on and called her an ugly old hag, and Wuya, all 15 centuries of her, could do absolutely nothing about it. The man who kept her powerless, who looked at the strongest villain alive and decided she was a tool to be limited, was the one villain here who had once been a hero. And Jack worshipped him. Wuya was not the only villain orbiting Jack. There was a whole shelf of them. The ones who showed up for a single Wu made their mess and vanished by the next episode. The strongest of the disposable bunch wasn't even a person. Mala Jong was a demon assembled entirely out of Shen Gong Wu, a walking armory that was flat-out invincible as long as the Wu stayed attached. And the trick to beating it was simply pulling out the one piece that mattered, the heart of Jong. Not the Heylin Seed, which fans mix it up with constantly. That's a different object entirely, and it grows a completely different villain. Then came the Rogues Gallery. Katnape, a spoiled rich girl with genetically enhanced super kittens who wanted luxury more than power and mocked Jack better than anyone alive. Tubamura, a sumo ninja whose most fearsome quality was a chihuahua named Muffin Face, which he made Jack walk. Vlad, a fake friendly Russian who blew his own scheme by gloating too early. Panda Bubba, a crime boss who got his hands on world-altering magic and used it for regular street crime like painting with a nuclear reactor. Cyclops, an enormous one-eyed dimwit. Lamim, a silent mime beaten when a hero simply mimed back and made him punch himself unconscious. Gigi and Raksha, two separate villains. People constantly merge into one, but one is a French-accented living flower and the other is a yodeling snowman who wanted to freeze the planet. Dyrus, a sea witch out to drown it, and Sabini, a creature of mischief who came and went in a single afternoon. Here is what happened to most of them. They signed up with the bigger villains, outlived their usefulness, and got discarded. Chase Young, when he was done with his minions, literally catapulted them off his mountain one by one. That was the Heylin side's whole social structure. Which brings us to the man doing the catapulting, the villain everyone feared, the one Jack worshipped, and the only one on this list who started out good. Chase Young was a hero once. A Xiaolin dragon, a warrior on the good side, standing beside Grandmaster Dashi in the fight that sealed Wuya away. That is the part people forget. The coolest, most composed villain in the show used to be one of the good guys. He gave it up on purpose. He was talked into it. Hannibal Roy Bean, hold that name, showed Chase a vision of a future where he stayed good and amounted to nothing, forever standing in the shadow of his own best friend, Master Monk Guan. That was the wound Hannibal pressed. Not greed, but the fear of being second. So Chase drank the Lao Mang Lone soup, a brew whose main ingredient is dragon, which granted immortality and eternal youth in exchange for his goodness. He became what he is now, an ageless warlord who can turn into a reptilian dragon served by an army of jungle cats that are really the great fighters he defeated over the centuries, transformed and collared, recallable to human shape with a snap of his fingers. He wanted one thing above world domination, to turn the show's best young monk, Omi, to the Heylin side, because a warrior that good should not be wasted on virtue. And here is the cost nobody put on the label. To become the greatest, Chase gave up the friend he'd fought beside, sealed away the ally who made him, and won himself an eternity alone at the top. He got everything Jack Spicer ever wanted: power, respect, a name people feared, and the price was exactly the thing Jack was already drowning in. Chase is what happens when the lonely kid actually wins, which made him the perfect idol for Jack, and the cruelest. Jack worshipped Chase, followed him, quoted him, begged to join him at every turn. Chase called him a pitiful worm, threw him off a cliff, and once assigned him to stay behind and clean up after Cyclops, but Jack got him back exactly once. In an episode called The New Order, Jack trapped Chase in a magic sphere and stole his jungle cats, running the villain who wouldn't learn his name right off his own mountain for one glorious afternoon. It didn't hold. It never held. But for a few minutes, the worm ran the board. The showdowns between Chase and the monks were another matter, deadly serious duels, right up until a corrupted Omi started naming his attacks Sparrow-Eating Hot Dog, and even Chase Young had to stop mid-fight and ask if he'd heard that correctly. For all his power, Chase was afraid of exactly one thing: it could sit in the palm of your hand. The most dangerous villain in Shaolin Showdown is a bean. A small, legless, talking bean with a soft southern drawl and the manners of a gentleman who is about to sell you something you'll regret. Hannibal Roy Bean does not look like the end of the world. He just keeps turning out to be it. He is the one who corrupted Chase Young. The vision of the shadow future, the nudge toward the soup, all of it was Hannibal's work. Chase's very first act as a villain was to betray him and seal him inside the yin-yang world, a realm that strips a person's good chi from them, which tells you how dangerous Chase considered him even then. He spent 1,500 years in there and got out anyway. And once loose, Hannibal ran circles around everyone, a manipulator with the Moby Morpher to take any shape he liked, a bird named Ying Ying to fetch and steal for him, and the power to swell to enormous size when charm stopped working. Hannibal went after Raimundo, the one most likely to fall, hunting him through his own fears and nightmares, trying to grow a second Chase Young out of the team. It nearly worked more than once. But here is the single fact that ranks him. When the monks accidentally freed Hannibal, Raimundo guessed it might be end of the world time again. Chase Young corrected him. No, he said, it is far worse than that. The immortal warlord who feared nothing, who gave up his soul to be untouchable, was afraid of one being in all of existence. And it was this being. Twice the scariest villains in the show were heroes. Raimundo was the hot-headed one of the four monks, and when the others got promoted ahead of him, the sting of it did what 1,500 years of Heylin scheming couldn't: it opened a door. He took Wuya's offer, stole the serpent's tail, and handed a 1,500-year-old witch the key to her own body. For a stretch, the coolest kid on the team was ruling the world at the side of its oldest evil. What pulled him back wasn't a spell or a showdown. He missed his friends more than he wanted the throne, and he traded it all back to put her in the box again. Omi's turn was darker because he didn't choose it. The little monk was the purest hero in the show, which made him the prize Chase Young wanted most. Chase engineered it carefully, separated Omi from his good chi, and let the leftover turn him into a snarling Heylin loyalist, then transformed him into a jungle cat like all the warriors before him. Freeing Omi cost the other three everything they were willing to wager, because that is how this show worked. Goodness was never a fixed thing. It was a woo anyone could lose, which is the real reason to ask the question everyone asks about this show. Out of all of them, the bean, the dragon, the witch, the boy, who was actually the strongest? So who wins? It depends on which crown you mean, because there are three, and no single villain holds all of them. Strongest by raw power is Wuya, but only for the few brief windows she actually had her full magic before someone took it back. Every other time she was a ghost or a mortal, and the title meant nothing. Most evil is Hannibal Roy Bean, hands down, the corrupter, the manipulator, the one thing Chase Young feared, the villain the show was almost afraid to let win. Scariest in practice is Chase, because he was competent in a way the others weren't, patient, disciplined, and genuinely close to turning the show's best hero. 3 villains, 3 crowns, and the honest answer to who was the strongest is that it's the wrong question. Before the last word, a few corrections, because memory plays favorites. Jack's little cousin Megan was not a villain. She was on the Xiaolin side, and mostly there to embarrass him. Mala Jong ran on the heart of Jong, not the Heylin Seed. And Gigi and Raksha are 2 different one-off villains, not 1E, the flower, and the snowman. One more thing worth flagging. Everything about Shaolin Chronicles, the later revival series, runs on its own separate canon, and what's coming next comes from there. By the end of the original series, Jack Spicer is still there. Still scheming, still losing, still calling for his jackpots, still 15 and furious about it. He never conquers anything. He never wins the showdown that would make the others take him seriously. His story doesn't end so much as it just keeps going. One more scheme, one more loss. The same kid rehearsing the same evil laugh for a room that isn't listening. Except once. There is a single timeline in this show where Jack Spicer wins, really wins. A glimpse of a possible future where he finally did it. Conquered the world, crowned himself Emperor of Darkness, and locked away everyone who ever looked down on him. Chase, Wuya, Hannibal, all of them, caged, under the heel of the boy they called a worm. And the show presents this not as a triumph, but as the worst thing that could possibly happen. A nightmare future the heroes have to erase from existence. That is the quiet gut punch of Jack Spicer. The one reality where the lonely kid gets everything he wanted is a reality so dark it cannot be allowed to stand. And still, he's the one you remember. You might have to think for a second to place Chase Young. You might not remember Hannibal's name at all, but you remember Jack, the evil laugh, the jackpots, the 1, 2, 3, because Jack Spicer was never the villain you were afraid of. He was the villain you understood. He wasn't a dark lord, or an ancient evil, or a force of nature. He was a kid who wanted to be seen, who wanted to matter, who built his own friends because the real ones never came, and who kept getting up every single time to lose again. Every other villain wanted to rule the world. Jack just wanted somebody to watch him do it.